Donald Trump immune from prosecution for things he did while he was president? And is Donald Trump qualified to run for office under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment? Joining me now is a true expert on the United States Constitution, Jeff Rosen, president and CEO of the National Constitution Center, law professor at the George Washington University School of Law, and author of the important new book, which comes out on February 13th, The Pursuit of Happiness: How Classical Writers on Virtue Inspired the Lives of the Founders and Defined America. Welcome, by the way, Jeff, and congratulations on the new book. It is great to have you here.
So great to see you, Ali. Thanks so much.
I would love to just be a fly in the wall around you in these last few weeks as these constitutional arguments are made. Let's start with the one that is currently before the Third Circuit Court in D.C., but also sitting and pending before the Supreme Court about the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that argues that having taken an oath, Donald Trump then participated in an insurrection, and as such, he is disqualified from running for any office again. Where is this argument right now, and what do you think is going to happen with it?
Well, you had a great discussion about it last week with our friend Judge Ludig, Ali.
That's right.
As the judge articulated, there's this dramatic clash between the text and original understanding of the 14th Amendment, which many conservative scholars have argued is self-executing. And that means that people who take an oath and then engage in insurrection are disqualified without action from Congress. And then all these prudential considerations that the court may be weighing, like could there be chaos if different states reach different conclusions? Is it up to states and not Congress to decide, and so forth? No easy way for the Supreme Court to avoid deciding one way or the other. Either they'll say that he is disqualified across the board and therefore cannot be eligible to be president of the United States, or they may hold that the clause is not enforceable, but coming up with some kind of moderate compromise here just doesn't seem possible.
You've always talked about the degree to which the Supreme Court, generally speaking, is not supposed to be listening to the noise outside or the political commentary, but over time does sort of start to match up with public opinion. In this instance, Trump is not qualified based on the 14th Amendment, Section 3. That would have remarkable political ramifications. Does that come into the Supreme Court justices' thinking of what they're supposed to do?
There is, in fact, a doctrine called the political question doctrine, and Donald Trump's lawyers have invoked it. And basically it says that when a decision of the courts might create chaos, when it might be embarrassing, when it might call the legitimacy of courts into question, then judges should stay out of it and basically let the political branches decide. And Trump's lawyers here are saying, let Congress decide when it counts the electoral vote. Don't have judges involved in any way. The problem is that's the opposite of the argument the Supreme Court adopted in Bush v. Gore. It would certainly be odd to adopt it here and not there. And it also just clashes with the text and original understanding of the Constitution, as Judge Ludig suggests. So that's not an easy out-ramp here.
Let me ask you about the immunity question. I want to play for our viewers sound of John Sauer in court. Now, Sauer, it is important to note, was a Solicitor General. He's very learned. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He knows a lot about the Constitution. But in this following statement that he makes to the judges, he takes on two distinct arguments, which I want to discuss with you on the other side.
If a president has to look over his shoulder or her shoulder every time he or she has to make a controversial decision and worry, after I leave office, am I going to jail for this? When my political opponents take power, that inevitably dampens the ability of the president.
Two very interesting points here. One is, does a president always have to doubt what he does? Will saying that Donald Trump is not immune from prosecution mean that every president going forward has doubts about the legality of what they are doing and then doesn't take some decisions because they're frightened of the outcome? Part two of his sentence was, and am I going to jail for this when my political opponents take power? So there's an implication in that sentence that this isn't just a legal discussion. There might be political forces at play. I'd like your thought. Two sentences, two very different thoughts.
So significant. So all of this is coming from a case called Nixon versus Fitzgerald in 1982, where the Supreme Court said that when a president commits civil actions that turn out possibly to be illegal, like firing a whistleblower, he should be immune because he shouldn't have to be second-guessing himself. Is it legal to fire this guy or not? When the law isn't clear in civil cases, there should be qualified immunity. That's totally different, as Judge Pan was suggesting in her questions here, from ordering the assassination of a political rival or selling state secrets. And here, John Sauer is trying to say, well, the president shouldn't be second-guessing himself for official acts. But no one doubts that assassinating a rival or, selling secrets is illegal, and therefore Sauer's attempt to extend this prudential doctrine of qualified immunity into all criminal acts a president might commit is just not going to fly. The D.C. Circuit's not going to buy it, and the Supreme Court's not going to buy it either.
In your new book, Jeff, it's coming out on the 13th, February 13th, you profile 6 of the most influential founders: Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. And you're illustrating what pursuing happiness meant in their lives. It's an interesting way to look at things because you've written so many books that you can now take this on. What did it look like then, and what does it look like now, given the context of the things that we're talking about now, the threats to democracy that we're seeing more and more frequently?
Ali, it was so remarkable for me to see the degree to which, for the founders, happiness meant not feeling good, but being good, not the pursuit of pleasure, but the pursuit of virtue. And they thought that personal self-government was necessary for political self-government, that the republic would fall if our leaders were not virtuous and if we, the people, were not virtuous. I found this amazing sentence from Thomas Jefferson predicting the rise of Donald Trump. And Jefferson, when he receives the Constitution, is worried that a distant president might lose an election by a few votes, falsely claim the election had been stolen, and mobilize his supporters and refuse to leave office. This is Jefferson's words. He will pretend false votes, foul play, hold possession of the reign of government. So Jefferson and the other founders are afraid of demagogues who are going to put their own self-interest above that of the people. The solution for them is virtue. We need presidential candidates who will be moderate, temperate, restrained, put the interest of the country above their selfish greed and ambition. And this is key, we need citizens who will vote for leaders who will be virtuous and who will master our own partisan passions and favor the public good. I explore all this in the book. I'm so excited to share it with you, Ali, and can't wait to hear what you think.
I would love that, and I think it's interesting when you bring up the term moderate. You're not saying political moderate. You're not saying they have to be in the middle of the political stream. You're saying moderate in terms of the way in which they conduct themselves, the way in which they deal with the issues of the nation. An important book, as are all the books you've ever written, and I would recommend to folks that there's never a better time than to get familiar with the corpus of Jeffrey Rosen. Jeffrey Rosen is the president and the CEO of the National Constitution Center, author of The Pursuit of Happiness: How Classical Writers on Virtue Inspired the Lives of the Founders.